Cold isn't the worst thing about being kicked out at 18. It's the silence after the door shuts, how the world suddenly pretends you never existed. The last sound Grucka heard from her clan home was the wooden bar dropping into place. Then the muffled chant from inside, a ritual phrase she'd memorized as a child, "No weak blood returns." She stood in the snow a long moment, waiting for anyone to crack the door, to call her name, to say it was a test, a joke, a mistake. Nothing. The wind did what families sometimes do. It moved on. Grucka adjusted the thin strap of her pack. It wasn't much: 2 folded shirts, a dull eating knife, a chipped cup, and the one thing she refused to leave behind, a small leather pouch with 3 coins in it, 2 copper, 1 gold, her entire life measured in weight and metal. In the village below the ridge, lanterns glowed like safe stars. The scent of smoke and stew drifted up the slope. Humans lived down there. Humans who kept their doors latched when an orc walked by. Humans who spoke with their hands near their pockets. But humans also bought things, sold things, argued over things, and Grucka had 1 gold. She learned early that in the eyes of the world that coin mattered more than her name. She started walking. By the time she reached the human village of Briar Hollow, her boots were wet, her fingers numb, and her pride scraped raw. The first door she approached had a red ribbon tied to the handle, some warding charm meant to discourage spirits and beasts. The ribbon trembled in the wind like it was afraid of her. She didn't knock. A second door, a third, curtains twitched then stilled. The village was awake and pretending not to be. At the edge of the market square, a sagging awning sheltered a notice board plastered with announcements: missing goats, broken cart axles, a reward for whoever found a lost wedding band. And one small parchment, pinned crookedly with a nail: abandoned property, the old ELLBRIDGE house. Unsafe, cursed, ownership transfer, 1 gold, see clerk HARBENAT. The town hall. Grucka leaned in, reading it twice. She half expected the letters to rearrange themselves into a trick. 1 gold, her entire life. The words unsafe and cursed were supposed to repel her, but she'd been raised on warnings. Don't go beyond the ridge. Don't speak to humans. Don't ask questions. Don't be different. Warnings were just fences people built around their fear. And Grucka had spent 18 years learning how to climb. Town Hall was a squat stone building that smelled of ink, damp wool, and old arguments. A pot-bellied stove glowed in the corner, making the air heavy with smoke and hope. Behind a counter sat Clerk Harbin, a thin man with a bald scalp and a pen tucked behind his ear. He looked up, saw her tusks, and did the smallest, quickest flinch, as if his face had its own instincts. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice polite in the way people were polite to storms. Grucka placed her leather pouch on the counter and loosened the drawstring. "I'm here for the abandoned house," she said. Harbin blinked. "The Elbridge place?" Grucka nodded. "You can read," he blurted, then coughed. "Sorry, never mind, you mean the notice." "I mean the sale," she said. Her voice steadied itself like a sword being drawn. 1 gold. Harbin stared a moment too long, as if waiting for someone to leap out and shout prank. Then he sighed, a man resigning himself to paperwork and regret. "Most folks don't," he stopped, thinking better of it. "We want someone to take it. Liability, you see." "Why is it 1 gold?" Grucka asked. Harbin's eyes drifted to the window, to the gray line of forest beyond. "Because nobody else will pay more. Because it's cursed." Hesitated. That hesitation was an answer with a robe thrown over it. "There were events," he said carefully. "Elbridge family vanished. Some say the house eats people. Some say bandits use it. Some say it's full of rot and snakes and old grief." Grucka's mouth twitched. "Sounds roomy." Harbin didn't laugh, but his shoulders lowered half an inch, like he'd expected her to roar or threaten. Instead, she was just a girl wanting a roof. He pulled out a ledger the size of a paving stone and dipped his pen. "Name?" Grucka almost said the clan name out of habit, then stopped. That name belonged to a door that had closed. "Grucka," she said, "just Grucka." Harbin wrote it down, lips moving as he spelled. Then he slid over a parchment covered in dense legal curls. "If you sign," he said, "the village holds no responsibility for injury, illness, disappearance, haunting, or—" "Got it," Grucka said, and scratched an X where he pointed. Harbin looked at her X as if it was a minor miracle. "And payment." Grucka poured her coins into her palm. 2 copper winked at the light. The gold sat heavy, warm from her skin. She set the gold on the counter. It made a soft sound, not loud but final. Harbin's eyes followed it like it was a falling star. "Key," he said, rummaging under the counter. He brought out an iron key on a ring, rusted at the teeth. "That's the front door, maybe." "Maybe," Grucka echoed. Harbin shrugged helplessly. "No one's tried in years." Grucka closed her fist around the key. The cold iron bit her skin. "A house, for 1 coin. For the first time since the bar dropped behind her, something in her chest loosened. Not hope, not yet, but space. The Elbridge house sat at the far end of a forgotten lane where weeds had eaten the cobbles and the trees leaned close like gossipers. It was bigger than she expected, 2 stories, a slanting roof, windows like dark eyes. The boards were gray with age, and vines crawled up the walls as if trying to pull the house back into the earth. The air around it felt thick, like the forest was holding its breath. Grucka approached anyway. She'd slept in colder places than fear. She'd eaten worse things than rumors. At the porch, she tried the key. It slid in with resistance, scraping as if the lock resented being remembered. She turned it. Something inside clicked like an old bone. The door opened with a groan. The smell that rolled out wasn't rot, not exactly. It was dust and damp wood and something faintly sweet like dried herbs. Grucka stepped inside. The entry hall was wide with a staircase that split halfway up. A chandelier hung above, missing half its crystals. A faded runner rug led deeper into shadow. She expected cobwebs. She expected animal nests. She expected a corpse because people loved stories. Instead, she heard a quiet sound, not wind, not creaking wood. A whisper of movement, soft and precise. Grucka froze, muscles coiling. "Hello," she called. The sound stopped. She listened the way her mother had trained her to listen for prey. Not with ears alone, but with skin, with breath, with the tiny shifts in silence. Then something moved again, and Grucka caught the faintest flicker of light from deeper in the house. Like a candle, her grip tightened on her knife. She moved forward. Step by careful step, she followed the corridor past a parlor with overturned chairs and a fireplace full of ash. Past a dining room where a long table sat under a sheet like a shrouded giant. The light came from the kitchen. Grucka reached the doorway and stopped. A girl stood there. Human, maybe 16, thin as a reed, hair the color of straw tied in a knot. She held a candle in one hand and a cleaver in the other, and her face was smudged with soot. Her eyes widened when she saw Grucka. Grucka's tusks showed when she spoke, not as a threat but as a fact. "You live here," the girl's cleaver trembled. "This house is cursed," the girl whispered. "You shouldn't be here." Grucka lifted the key ring so it caught the candlelight. "I bought it." The human girl stared at the key like it was a spell. "You can't," she said. "It doesn't let people." "It let me," Grucka said. The girl swallowed. "I'm not a person it wants." Grucka considered her. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated, as if names were dangerous. "Mara," Grucka nodded once. "Grucka." Mara's gaze flicked down to her tusks, to the broad shoulders, to the green skin. Fear was there, but also something else. Relief, not because Grucka was safe, because Grucka was new. "I was just staying," Mara said quickly. "Just until..." "Until what?" Grucka asked. Mara's jaw tightened. "Until I stopped being hungry." Grucka understood that language. She stepped into the kitchen, slow, showing she wasn't pouncing. The room was less ruined than the rest of the house. Someone had swept. A pot sat on the stove. A bundle of herbs hung from a beam. Mara had made a place in the bones of this house. And the house had let her. Grucka looked around. "Why hasn't the village thrown you out?" Mara gave a humorless laugh. "They don't come here. Because of the curse." Mara nodded. "Or because they're cowards." Grucka set her pack on the table. "Then we have something in common." Mara blinked. "I have nowhere else," Grucka said, "and you clearly don't either." Mara's cleaver lowered a fraction. Grucka reached into her pack, pulled out her chipped cup, and set it on the table like a peace offering. "I'm not here to take what little you have," she said, "but I'm not leaving. I paid a gold for this roof." Mara stared at her, then at the cup, then at the shadows in the corners of the kitchen. "Okay," Mara said finally, voice small, "but if it starts whispering, don't listen." Grucka's brow furrowed. "It whispers," Mara's candlelight trembled. "Sometimes at night, like it's remembering." Grucka thought of her clan door, the chant, the silence after. "Let it whisper," she said. "I'm good at not listening." That first night, Grucka slept on the kitchen floor near the stove. Mara insisted the upstairs rooms were worse, though she wouldn't explain why. They ate thin porridge, and Mara watched Grucka like she expected her to turn into a monster the moment the candle died. Grucka didn't blame her. Humans were told stories about orcs. Orcs were told stories about humans. Most stories were written by fear. As the house settled into darkness, the wind pressed against the windows. Somewhere above them, a loose shutter tapped like a knuckle. Grucka lay awake, eyes open, listening. Mara slept with the cleaver beside her. Hours passed. Then near midnight, Grucka heard it, a sound like paper sliding across wood, soft, slow. She sat up. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the dying embers. Mara's breathing was shallow and fast, like she was dreaming of running. The sound came again from the hallway. Grucka rose silently and padded to the doorway. The air was colder there, the darkness thicker. She leaned out peering. Something moved at the far end of the hall, not a figure, not a ghost. A door, she realized. A door she hadn't noticed earlier, half hidden behind a hanging tapestry. The door was opening, not swinging wide, just easing open like a careful hand. Grucka's skin prickled. Mara's warning surfaced, don't listen. But curiosity was a hunger too. Grucka moved down the hall. Each step felt like the house was measuring her. When she reached the door, she saw a narrow stairwell leading down beneath the house into a darkness that smelled of earth and old stone. A cellar. Except the air rising from it wasn't just damp, it was warm and faintly metallic like a forge. Grucka placed a hand on the door frame. The whispering began, not words at first, just the sensation of voices behind a wall, murmurs layered like dozens of people speaking at once in a language you almost remember. Her head throbbed. Then the murmurs sharpened. Mind stay door hungry. Grucka's jaw clenched. She tried to step back, but the warmth from below wrapped around her ankles like hands, not pulling, inviting. Grucka did something she'd never done in her clan. She spoke to the darkness like it could hear. I'm not food, she said. The whispering stopped, a beat of silence. Then clearly a single voice, thin and old like a sigh through dry leaves, spoke one word, proof. Grucka swallowed. What proof? She demanded. The air shifted like the house was leaning in. Then the whisper came again, different, almost hopeful. Fix. Grucka stared down the stairs. The voice wasn't threatening her, it was asking. The house wasn't hungry, it was broken, and it wanted someone to notice. Grucka backed away slowly. The door eased shut behind her with a soft click, as if satisfied that she'd heard enough for tonight. When she returned to the kitchen, Mara was sitting up, white-faced. You heard it, Mara whispered. Grucka nodded. Mara's eyes glistened. It didn't eat you, Grucka exhaled. Not yet. Mara let out a shaky laugh that turned into something dangerously close to a sob. She wiped at her eyes angrily, as if tears were a weakness she couldn't afford. It only whispers to you, Mara said. It never whispers to me, it just watches. Grucka looked at the embers, thinking of the word fix. Then maybe, she said slowly, it bought the wrong person. Mara frowned. What? Grucka's fist tightened around the K-ring. Maybe it bought the right one. Over the next days, Grucka explored the house in daylight. The curse felt smaller in the sun. The rooms were dusty but intact. The roof leaked in 2 places. The windows needed new panes. The back wall had rot creeping up like a bruise. It wasn't a haunted mansion. It was a neglected home. And neglect had a way of feeling like malice if you stayed too long in the dark. Mara showed her the well behind the house, half choked with leaves but still functional. She showed her a loose board under the pantry that hid a small stash of dried apples and stolen bread. You stole those, Grucka said. Mara lifted her chin. I survived those. Grucka didn't argue. In town, Grucka kept her head down, but she couldn't avoid people forever. She needed nails, boards, tar for the roof. She needed a proper axe, work gloves, and she needed work because her gold was gone. The first shopkeeper refused to serve her, muttering about bringing the curse closer. The second stared at her tusks and quoted a price double the normal one. Grucka nearly walked out. Then an older woman behind the counter, broad-shouldered, hair in a tight braid, smacked the shopkeeper on the back of the head. Stop being an idiot, Vesa, the woman snapped. She's paying, you like money, don't you? Vesa rubbed his head, scowling. The woman leaned over the counter and met Grucka's gaze without flinching. I'm Vesa, she said, as if that explained everything. If you're fixing that death house, you'll need proper nails, not those cheap bent things Harbin sells. Grucka blinked. Why are you helping me? Vesa shrugged, but her eyes were sharp. Because the house sits on my village's edge and scares my customers. If you make it less scary, I sell more horseshoes. Simple. Grucka nodded slowly. Honesty like that was almost comforting. Vesa slid a bundle of nails across the counter. Also, she added, voice lower, I don't believe in curses. I believe in people making excuses for not dealing with their mess. Grucka's mouth twitched. Same. Vesa's gaze softened a fraction. You'll pay when you can. Bring me firewood or lift heavy things. I'm not sentimental, but I'm not stupid either. Grucka took the nails like they were a treaty. Outside, the village watched her with the same cautious curiosity they'd reserved for a wolf walking upright. But now there was something else mixed in, intrigue, because the orc girl hadn't died yet. Days turned into weeks. Grucka patched the roof with tar and scavenged shingles. She replaced broken boards in the porch. She hauled water, chopped wood, scrubbed soot off walls. Mara helped when she wasn't hiding. At first, they spoke little. They moved around each other like strangers sharing a storm shelter. Then one morning, Grucka found Mara sitting in the parlor, staring at the sheet-covered furniture. What are you doing? Grucka asked. Mara's hands were clenched in her lap. Trying to remember what it feels like to sit somewhere that isn't temporary. Grucka paused. She understood that too well. Grucka walked over, grabbed the sheet, and yanked it off the chair. Dust bloomed like a ghost. Mara coughed, laughing. Grucka dragged the chair to the window where sunlight spilled in. Then she sat down, planted her boots on the floor, and said, like this. Mara stared. Grucka patted the arm of the chair. Sit. Temporary is a lie people tell themselves so they don't build anything. Mara hesitated, then sat. The chair creaked but held. She exhaled like her lungs had been waiting for permission. That night the house whispered again, softly, like it was testing if Grucka still heard. Grucka listened with her eyes open, and this time among the murmurs she caught something new, not hungry, not proof. A name, Elbridge, and beneath it a phrase like a memory pressed into wood, the door under the door. Grucka sat up. The hairs on her arms rose. The cellar door didn't open on its own this time. But Grucka felt it like a heartbeat below the floorboards, slow and patient. The house wasn't just broken, it was guarding something. Grucka waited until morning. Mara watched as Grucka gathered a lantern, rope, and crowbar. No, Mara said immediately, panic flickering. You're not going down there. Grucka glanced at her. Have you been? Mara shook her head hard. I tried once. The stairs, she swallowed. The air got heavy, like my bones wanted to lie down and never get up. Grucka tightened the lantern strap. Then it doesn't want you, it wants me. Mara's voice cracked. Why would it want you? Grucka looked at the house, at the patched roof, the swept floors, the fresh wood in the porch. Because I'm the first one who didn't run, she said. Mara grabbed her sleeve. Grucka, please. Grucka put a hand over Mara's. Her palm was warm and small. I'll tie the rope around my waist, Grucka said. If I tug twice, pull. Mara's eyes glistened. And if you don't tug, Grucka's mouth tightened. Then you lock the door and you go to Vesa. Tell her you need help. She'll grumble, but she'll come. Mara's grip tightened. Promise me you'll come back. Grucka hesitated. Promises were dangerous, but so was living like you didn't deserve one. I'll come back, Grucka said. Then she pulled her sleeve free and walked to the cellar door. It was closed, as always, hidden behind the tapestry. Grucka yanked the tapestry aside. The cellar door was already slightly ajar, like it had been waiting. Grucka swallowed, then stepped down. The stairs creaked but didn't break. The lantern light pushed back the darkness, revealing stone walls slick with moisture. The air grew warmer as she descended, and the metallic scent strengthened. At the bottom, she found not a cellar full of barrels and cobwebs, but a second door. A door set into the stone itself, carved with symbols that weren't human or orc. The wood was black, polished by time, and the handle was shaped like a ring. Grucka stared. The door under the door, she whispered. The whispering rose around her, not loud but intense, like a crowd holding its breath. Grucka placed her palm on the wood. It was warm, alive. The voice returned, clearer now. Proof, fix, open. Grucka's heart hammered. What's behind you? She demanded. The door didn't answer. Instead, the symbols on it pulsed faintly, like embers under ash. Grucka realized with a jolt that it wasn't waiting for a key. It was waiting for a choice, her choice. Grucka did the only thing she knew how to do when faced with something stronger than her. She stood her ground. Fine, she said. I'll open you, but if you try to hurt me or her, she bared her tusks, voice low. I will burn this whole place down, curse or no curse. Silence. Then the warmth shifted, almost like amusement. The door handle loosened under her grip. Grucka pulled. The door swung inward without resistance, and the world changed. Light spilled out, not lantern light, not sunlight, a pale, steady glow like moonlight trapped in glass. Grucka stepped through and found herself in a room that shouldn't fit beneath the house. The ceiling arched high, supported by stone pillars carved with the same strange symbols. Shelves lined the walls, filled with jars, books, and metal tools that gleamed like they'd been polished yesterday. In the center of the room stood a circle etched into the stone floor, an intricate pattern of lines and runes. At its heart, a small pedestal held a metal box. The air hummed. Grucka took a step forward, and the whispers stopped. For the first time since she arrived, the house was silent, not watching, not remembering, listening. Grucka approached the pedestal. The box was about the size of her forearm, sealed with a latch shaped like a clasped hand. She reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the latch, the glow brightened and a voice different from the house spoke inside her head. Not words she heard with ears, words she felt. Caretaker recognized. Grucka jerked back, breathing hard. Then the voice continued, calm and ancient. Elbridge House is a vessel, a ward, a refuge. Last caretaker failed. Refuge turned to trap. Fix requires bond. Grucka stared at the box, mind racing. A vessel for what? She whispered aloud. The metal box clicked. The latch opened by itself. Inside was a ring, simple iron like a black band, and beneath it a folded strip of paper preserved in wax. Grucka picked up the paper carefully, and in the lantern light she saw human handwriting. If you're reading this, I'm gone, not dead, just removed. The house is not cursed, it's wounded. We built it to hide those the world hunts, the different, the unwanted, the inconvenient. It recognizes that kind of soul. If you can hear it, it chose you. Wear the ring. Speak the vow, and for the love of all quiet things, don't let fear make you cruel. Grucka's throat tightened. A house built for the unwanted, a refuge, not a curse. She thought of being kicked out at 18. Of Mara sleeping with a cleaver, of the village shutting its eyes. Her fingers closed around the iron ring. Behind her, faintly as if from very far away, the house whispered, "Fix." Grucka slid the ring onto her finger. It was cold at first, then warmed like it had been waiting for her skin. The glow in the room surged. And suddenly, Grucka wasn't just standing beneath the house. She was inside it, not physically, but connected. She felt every beam, every nail, every crack in the wall like it was part of her own body. She felt the rot as an ache, the broken window as a sting, the empty rooms as loneliness. Grucka gasped, knees buckling. Above, she sensed Mara pacing, fear like a tight knot. Grucka also sensed something else. A presence tucked deep inside the house, behind layers of warding and old magic. Not evil, not hungry, just scared, like a child locked in a closet too long. Grucka pressed a hand to the stone floor. "I'm here," she whispered. The house answered, not in words, but in warmth that wrapped around her like a blanket. And in that warmth was a promise: "You fix me, I shelter you." Grucka swallowed hard. For the first time since she'd been kicked out, something in the world offered her a trade that wasn't cruel. She stood up, steadier now. Then she picked up the ring's companion, the vow etched into the underside of the metal box in those strange symbols. And somehow she understood it, not because she'd studied it, because the house wanted her to. Grucka spoke the vow aloud, voice echoing through the impossible room. "I will keep the door open for those with nowhere else. I will not turn fear into a weapon. I will mend what was broken and be mended in return." The runes flared. The entire house above shuddered. And then, like a sigh releasing years of tension, something shifted. The curse, if you could call it that, unwound. Grucka climbed back upstairs into the kitchen, lantern still in hand. Mara practically crashed into her, eyes wild. "You were gone forever," Mara choked, gripping her like she needed proof Grucka was real. Grucka blinked, surprised at the contact, then slowly put a hand on Mara's shoulder. "I'm back," she said. Mara's gaze dropped to Grucka's hand, to the iron ring now on her finger. "What's that?" Mara whispered. Grucka looked down too. "It's a promise," she said. The house around them felt different, lighter. The air no longer pressed in, it breathed out. The shadows didn't feel like watchers. They felt like corners waiting to be warmed. Mara sniffed, eyes darting around. "It feels quieter," Grucka nodded. Then the stove, which had been cold, crackled to life by itself. Not a roaring blaze, just a gentle flame, as if the house was offering comfort like a timid host. Mara stared. "You did that?" Grucka shook her head slowly. "The house did." Mara's face was pale, but not with fear this time, with awe. Grucka turned toward the hallway and without thinking spoke softly, "Thank you." In response, a floorboard creaked, not ominously, but like a polite acknowledgement. Mara let out a shaky laugh. "So it's not cursed." Grucka's eyes narrowed. "It was never cursed, it was abandoned." Mara's expression hardened. "Like us." Grucka met her gaze. "Not anymore," she said. Word spread faster than smoke. People noticed the roof patch, the cleared yard, the light in the windows at night. They started whispering new stories. The orc girl had tamed the curse. The orc girl had made a deal with spirits. The orc girl was building a monster nest. And then something happened that forced the village to look directly at the house they'd avoided. A blizzard hit Briar Hollow early, mean and sudden. Wind snapped branches, snow piled high against doors, and the road to the next town vanished under white. By nightfall, the village was a bowl of shivering lights. Grucka stood at her window, watching lanterns flicker. She felt the storm in her bones now, literally. The house told her where the wind hit hardest, where the shingles strained, where the chimney needed bracing. And she felt something else too, fear in the village, not just general fear. Specific, moving. A cluster of it coming down the abandoned lane toward her house. Grucka grabbed her cloak and opened the door before they could knock. 3 figures stumbled into her yard, half buried in snow. A woman carrying a limp child, an old man bent over a cane, a teenage boy with blood on his sleeve. They froze when they saw her. "Please," the woman gasped, voice raw. Our roof," she swallowed, eyes wide with terror and desperation. "The inn's full." The hall's stove went out. Someone said your house. Grucka looked at the child. The girl's lips were blue. Mara appeared behind Grucka, clutching a blanket. Grucka stepped aside. Come in, she said. The woman blinked, stunned. Yule, the boy started. Grucka's gaze sharpened. Move before she stops breathing. They rushed inside. The moment the child crossed the threshold, the house's warmth rose, steady and strong. The stove flared. The air softened. The child coughed. Color returned to her cheeks. The woman burst into sobs, clinging to her. The old man stared around the kitchen like he'd stepped into a fairy tale. It's warm, he whispered. By the ancestors, it's warm. Mara wrapped the blanket around the child, hands gentle. Grucka felt the house's approval like a quiet pulse. Door open, it seemed to say. Outside, more figures appeared at the end of the lane, drawn by rumor and need. Grucka swallowed. This was the moment that would define her. She could shut the door and protect what she'd built, or she could do what no one had done for her. She lifted her chin, voice carrying into the storm. If you're freezing, she called, get inside, leave your knives at the door, no fighting, no yelling, this is a house, not a battlefield. People hesitated, some turned away, pride stronger than cold, but many didn't. They came in one by one, eyes wary, shoulders hunched, bringing snow and shame and hope into Grucka's kitchen, and the house held them all. By morning, Briar Hollow's stories had changed, not because fear vanished, but because gratitude had a louder voice when it wanted to. People left her house with warmed hands and quieter eyes. Some avoided meeting her gaze, others mumbled awkward thanks. One man who'd overcharged her at the shop left a sack of flour on her porch without knocking. Vesa arrived later, stomping snow off her boots, scowling at the crowd spilling out of the lane. So, Vesa said, surveying the house with sharp eyes, you turned the death house into a shelter. Grucka crossed her arms. Seems that way. Vesa grunted, smart, now the village owes you. Grucka's mouth tightened. I don't want their debt. Vesa's gaze softened again, just a fraction. Then don't collect it like a loan. She jerked her chin toward the people outside. Collect it like a habit, make them used to needing you, makes it harder to hate you. Grucka stared, surprised by the blunt wisdom. Mara stepped up beside her, hair mussed, eyes tired but bright. Will they come back? She asked quietly. Grucka looked at the lane where footprints carved paths in the snow. They will, Grucka said, then after a beat she added, and maybe that's the point. Mara glanced at the ring on Grucka's finger. So what is this place really? Grucka breathed in the warm air, the scent of herbs, the faint hum in the beams. A refuge, she said. A second chance with walls, Mara swallowed. For who? Grucka looked down at the girl beside her, at the cleaver now hanging on a hook, unused. At the way Mara stood closer to the hearth now, like she believed she deserved warmth. For the ones who get kicked out, Grucka said, at 18 or 16 or 70 for any reason. The house creaked softly like agreement. Grucka felt its presence, steady as a heartbeat, and for the first time she didn't feel like she was standing outside the world looking in. She felt like she'd built a door, and this time she was the one holding it open. That afternoon, Harbin arrived with a new parchment in his hands, cheeks pink from cold and embarrassment. He stammered, avoiding her eyes. The council, well, people are talking about last night. Grucka leaned against the doorway. Let them talk. Harbin cleared his throat. They want to formalize things. Formalize? Grucka echoed. Harbin held out the parchment. A grant for repairs and a designation, he swallowed. They want to call it the Hollow House, a village shelter. Grucka stared at the paper. A month ago, these people wouldn't let her buy nails without suspicion. Now they wanted to put her home in their records like it belonged to them. Mara bristled behind her. Grucka took the parchment slowly, reading the words. Harbin's handwriting shook a little. Is there a catch? Grucka asked. Harbin hesitated. They want oversight. Grucka's jaw tightened. So they want control. Harbin's shoulders sagged. They fear what they don't understand. Grucka looked at the house, at the beams she'd repaired, the warmth it offered, the ring on her finger. She thought of the vow, I will keep the door open, I will not turn fear into a weapon. She handed the parchment back. No, she said. Harbin blinked. No, Grucka's voice was steady. This house isn't theirs to govern, they abandoned it. They called it cursed so they wouldn't have to look at their own cruelty. Harbin's mouth opened, closed. Grucka stepped closer, eyes hard. But I'll make a deal. Harbin swallowed. What kind? Grucka pointed toward the lane, toward the village. They can donate supplies, they can volunteer, they can bring food, they can help repair, but this house stays a refuge, not a council project, not a poster, not a trophy. Harbin hesitated. And if they refuse, Grucka smiled, small and sharp, then next blizzard they can freeze somewhere else. Harbin stared a long moment, then surprisingly he nodded. I'll tell them, he said softly. As he turned to leave, Grucka called after him, voice lower. And Harbin, he paused. Tell them the house cost 1 gold, she said. Tell them it was cheap because no one wanted it, and tell them what it became because someone did. Harbin swallowed hard, then left, boots crunching in snow. Mara exhaled shakily. You just said no to the council, Grucka shrugged. I've had enough people deciding what I'm allowed to have. Mara looked around the warm kitchen, the sturdy table, the hearth that no longer felt temporary. And what are you allowed to have? Mara asked, voice small. Grucka's hand brushed the iron ring. She looked at Mara, then at the door, then at the house itself, this wounded thing that had chosen her. A life, she said, and a place to put it. The house creaked gently like a laugh. Outside, Briar Hollow's bell began to ring, calling villagers to meeting, calling them to decide what to do about the orc girl who had turned their haunted shame into their safest room. Grucka didn't flinch. Let them decide, she already had, and the door stayed open.